Next in Illustrator Lab 4, we're going to work with images. I'd mentioned this before, but I'll go through this a little bit further with the different ways you can manipulate your image. So they can be JPEGs, PNGs, anything pixelated like a Photoshop file, a photo image that's built out of squares of different colors instead of the vector art lines that are mathematically calculated. So what we have to do is go to File, Place, and there's the key command. And I'm going to select this cat image, which is in the module if you'd like to play around with it. And you can see the icon has a 1 of 1. So that's one image that I'm trying to place. And where the little arrow is will be where that starts the top left corner of the image. All right, and you can see it's a shape, and if I do Command Y, you can see that it's not vector, it's just a big X for picture. And you can see here under Appearance, which is under Properties, there's Appearance area, but you can also do the Appearance palette. That's its own palette separate from Properties. But both of those are good like dashboards, so you know what's going on. To scale this, you can use the Scale tool, which is here, or you can just hold Shift and scale it which way you would want. Make sure that you're not scaling any sort of pixelated image less than 80% or more than 120. If it's less than 80%, go back to the original Photoshop file and scale it in the program, and then re-import using Place. If it's above 120, there's not much you can do. It will start falling apart if you scale it too much, and you will see that it's getting rough looking. So I'm going to undo that, do Command 0 to get back to my page. And you don't want to skew images. You don't want something like this. Even in your graphics, you don't want it to be skewed. That's not professional looking. So you're going to hold Shift so that it's proportionate. Okay. And you can see to the right of my sideways arrow, my 45-degree arrow, that it'll tell you the size. So that's helpful as well. So you can also crop this in the program, although I recommend using Photoshop or the original program to crop. But you can do that if you go to Properties and you've got some quick links down here. Always check there, and you can see Crop Image. And you'll get this notification, cropping a link embeds a copy of the original. So the original that you've imported won't be cropped, just this version. It'll like make a second copy in this file only. And that's fine. That's what you want. And you get these crop tools, and we'll go into Photoshop a little bit more, and the cropping in Photoshop looks like this. And let's say we crop a little closer to him, and you just click and drag to where you want to crop it, and then you double click in the middle. Or just not, you don't even need to do it in Photoshop. You have to click and crop it. And you just push Apply. And now you have a cropped image that you can use without all that extra stuff. In Photoshop, it's the same idea. You're just going to double click in the middle and it will apply for you. But always look here. There's Properties has a lot of interesting command, like shortcuts. Here is some new AI that you might want to play around with. So it's generate vectors that they're still working on, but you just can pick a scene, a subject, or icon. So subject would be ice cream castle, let's say. You can go into great detail, that's orange, that kind of thing. There's some suggestions. You can have a lot of detail, little detail, all kinds of settings. And that little starry look is anything AI has that starry generate look. And it's going to give you some variations Just since we're in the properties, you might want to play around with that because it's kind of fun. And you can see you have 3 options, and you can keep going. And this is generated actual vector art. So Command Y, you can see, and then you can just select which one you like best. They'll give you 3 options. You can keep going. So you might want to just play around with that. You don't need to do anything with it, but it's a lot of fun. It's a little hokey to me, so I don't usually use it. I like the AI in Photoshop better, but that might be something that might be useful to you coming up. All right, so using effects, open the lions file, and you can see there's different lions that are vector art, and they have different mains. And if you go to appearance, or even the appearance part of the properties, let's go to the main appearance, it'll tell you what's going on. And it's all under this effect. So these effects have already been applied, pucker and bloat, and it'll say it here. To get to these effects, they're all here. And if you look here, it's Illustrator effects, and then Align, and then Photoshop effects. So generally in Illustrator, you want to keep with the Illustrator effects. So these will become vector art, as you can see here, pucker and bloat. There's all kinds of different ways to change or distort. Here's pucker and bloat under distort and transform. And you can click, this is a shortcut here, you can change it. You can see, so lots and lots of settings, lots of different effects that you can put on, so you can play with these. And again, if I just click on this, it goes right to that zigzag. I don't have to dig around in the effects menus to find out where that lives. So the effects for Photoshop, you can apply them to vector or Photoshop files that you place in Illustrator. But I always recommend doing Photoshop effects in Photoshop and then bringing it in the way you want into Illustrator. It just adds to the file size, and it can cause some printing problems. But you can certainly, apply those. Let's see what happens. That lion's mane, it's not as useful in Illustrator. Here's one that would work. Because these is flat art, and a lot of these examples, like you see this boat, has a lot going on to it. It's not just one color, so it doesn't really do much. So that's something to consider too, is when you use these effects that are for Photoshop. They may not come out great, but stylize, drop shadow, I use all the time. And you can see what happens here. So it's only affecting what I have selected, and you've got the opacity, and that's affecting only this shadow, the drop shadow. You can offset it, and you can see what's happening here, and then you can make it, it's kind of like a clear or a shadowy look. That's the normal. You can do a hard light, soft light. Most of the time, just normal or multiply will let the background show through a little bit more. You can blur it a lot. You can blur it a little. That's no blur, a little bit of blur. You can change the color. So let's say if it's green, you can see it's got like a greenish tint. What if we did yellow or something like that? It doesn't show up as much. So normally you would just do black, you can pick if you were doing a business card and you only had 2 colors to work with, magenta and blue, you would have to make that shadow blue, not black, because that's another color. So that's something to consider. You can uncheck the preview and check the preview to see it, but you can go through these and see where they live. They're all here in general, but you can also, appearance, you can get right to it and double click on it to make any sort of changes. So you can play around with these. You can also get to it with this appearance palette. So it's the same shortcut. So those are what you're to do. It's just to play around with. We're not turning any of this in just yet. This is just for you to understand how to apply these effects.